to a presentation on procrastination, how to use it in a positive way. My name is Emily. Just before we get started, there's a handout if you want to take a look at it. If you look up on Google or whatever search engine, Pittsburgh State University Procrastination Survey. It's a very quick one, just a few questions. Go ahead and fill that out so we can talk about it just a little bit. Kind of go through procrastination within yourself. So my name is Emily Malik. I'm an intern at Ellie Mental Health. I got my BA in psychology and sociology with a concentration in criminology. I'm currently a master's level student in social work. I have some experience working with adults who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I also have experience working with preschool age kids on a research level. Outside of work, I enjoy listening to music, playing video games, watching like horror and cartoons, and then making bracelets and doing a lot of different fun crafts. So if we want to go through the survey, just to give kind of a reference of where I scored. So my score in total was a 62. So that would have been like in that middle area. Some areas, if needed improvement, assess causes and implement a few solutions to impact your success. So if you went ahead and did that, there's a few different like things at the bottom saying like focus on the areas where you scored 5s to battle your specific procrastination tendencies. And identify replacement activities, so less important activities you do to avoid completing priority tasks. So just a little fun thing at the start. To begin, I want to talk about what is procrastination. So procrastination, it's the act of delaying or putting off tasks until the last minute or past their deadline. It's also more complicated, specific meaning is a form of self-regulation failure characterized by the irrational delay of tasks despite potentially negative consequences. Procrastination is a pretty common problem. So about 20% of adults in the US are chronic procrastinators, and among college students, about 80 to 95% procrastinate regularly. And procrastination is something that can happen in multiple areas of life. So school, work, projects, ignoring household chores, taking care of your health, etc. Most people think it's mostly just in school, but it really can happen anywhere. So what are some of the causes? One of them is overestimating how much time you might have left to perform certain tasks, maybe underestimating how long certain activities will take to complete, overestimating how motivated you might be in the future, or even just assuming that you need to be in the right frame of mind to work on a project. You know, just the idea of I don't feel like doing it right now, so I won't. There's also other causes. One of them is called present bias phenomenon. And this is when we're more motivated by immediate pleasure or rewards rather than long-term rewards. So for instance, explains why it feels good to procrastinate in the moment, like sitting on TikTok instead of working on your paper, which is something I tend to do a lot and seems like a lot of other people do as well. It can also be symptomatic of underlying mental health conditions. For example, depression. Feeling hopeless, helpless, or having a lack of energy can make it really difficult to start or even just finish the tasks that you need to do. OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder is another one. So maladaptive perfectionism can become a problem that kind of causes fears about making mistakes, doubts about whether or not you're doing something correctly, or worrying about others' expectations of you. And it can also be linked to having difficulty making decisions. So a lot of the time, people with OCD will procrastinate instead of trying to make a decision because it's just easier. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. A lot of the time, distraction from outside stimuli or internal thoughts, and or internal thoughts, especially if the task is difficult or not interesting when you're trying to complete it. Continue, I have a little video on procrastination.
This morning I got up and got ready quickly because I had to get a lot of stuff done. I sat down at my desk to start getting my stuff done and I spilled my coffee, so I got a sponge to clean it up, and I figured I'd take an extra minute to clean the whole desk because a clean desk would help me get my stuff done. When I was finished, I realized I hadn't eaten anything and I didn't want to be hungry while I got my stuff done, so I went into the kitchen and I was out of cereal. When I got to the grocery store, I remembered a bunch of other crap I needed to get, and I figured I was already there, so I did my shopping for the week so I didn't have to worry about it while I got my stuff done. When I got home, I didn't feel like cereal anymore, and so I made an omelet and I did the dishes so I wouldn't have to do them after I got my stuff done, and then I went out to get some oil from the hardware store because my desk chair is kind of squeaky and I didn't want to be distracted by a squeaky chair while I got my stuff done. When I got back, it was getting kind of late, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get my stuff done today, so I started watching the Twilight Zone marathon on TV. I just have to make sure I get to bed early because I want to be well rested tomorrow so I can get my stuff done.
Moving on, just quick questions for people to think about when they're watching. What are some things that you tend to procrastinate on, and why do you think you procrastinate on them? So there's a lot of common rationalizations when it comes to procrastination. So some people might say I'm more productive when I work under pressure, so I'm postponing all my work until the pressure builds up and then I'll get it done. Maybe they'll say I don't know how to do the problem, so I'm waiting until I know how before I try to do it. Some might say the task isn't getting done because I really don't want to do it, and that's just the truth. Some people will say, relax, it's the world's not going to end if I don't get it done. Maybe if I wait until last minute, I won't spend so much time on it. Or I waited until last minute before, so it worked out, so why not this time? So there's about 15 different reasons, according to one article, that people say they procrastinate. I kind of organized this into 4 different categories. The first one's confusion, so not knowing what needs to be done, or not knowing how to do something. So those might be reasons why people procrastinate. There's also a lack of motivation, so not feeling like you're in the mood to do it, or just not wanting to do it, not caring if it gets done, or when it gets done, or lacking the initiative to get started. Another category that I put in is just I have my reasons. So blaming sickness or poor health, which can be an understandable reason. However, if it's constantly a reason, that's when it can become a problem. Believing that you work better under pressure, or waiting for the right moment. And a lot of people, their reason is just I forgot to do it. And then the last category is putting it off. So, I can finish it at the last minute. We're delaying one task in favor of working on another, feeling like you need time to think about the task, or just having or being in a habit of waiting until the last minute to get stuff done. So procrastination can have a lot of negative effects overall. So one of them is putting off regular health checkups. So that can increase the risk of health issues by delaying important medical or dental appointments. There's also worse academic performance is pretty typical. So putting off studying or doing assignments, which can result in lower grades, decreased performance on tasks, and increased stress levels. In general, it can make you feel just bad. So a lot of people, they'll end up experiencing anxiety and depression symptoms, and people are less likely to demonstrate self-compassion. And there's also links with other health problems, so higher levels of stress, and then also people are more likely to experience acute health problems such as insomnia, digestive issues, muscle tension, muscle pain. So as much as it's a psychological thing that we do, it can actually affect like your physical health. However, there's also benefits to procrastination. However, the type that you have matters. So passive procrastination is delaying a task because you have trouble making decisions and acting on them. So that's kind of a negative form of procrastination. However, there's a positive form of it called active procrastination. So delaying a task purposefully because working under pressure allows you to feel challenged and motivated. And studies have found that active procrastinators are similar to those who don't procrastinate. Active procrastinators are similar to those who don't procrastinate at all. Procrastination also allows you time to finish other tasks. So instead of doing nothing at all, you can complete other tasks in place of that one, in place of the task that you've been procrastinating on. So being an active procrastinator. And then by completing other tasks, you might end up getting the motivation that you need to start the task you've been putting off. There's also more benefits. So it can give you time to plan and develop creative strategies. And in that time, you might come up with an idea that you wouldn't have thought about otherwise. Procrastination can also require that you work in a more efficient manner because you have to work faster in order to complete the task on time. For those that work under pressure, this can be a really big advantage, and people like that can actually thrive. I know that's kind of how I tend to function. And it can also increase your motivation for those who work well under pressure. Assignment that was once just super boring and like just not fun to do can actually become exciting. So a lot of active procrastinators may actually need a deadline in order to feel inspired to complete a task. So to overcome procrastination, a lot of it is about time management, task management, and mind management. For time management, a lot of people say try to do the unpleasant tasks first. Start setting a time to get it done, assign a time slot to work on the task, develop a daily priority list, guard against diversions or distractions. Always have your organizer with you or a way to organize your tasks, and use an occasional time log just to see how long it's taking you to get tasks done. For task management, try to do the unpleasant tasks in small pieces instead of doing it all at once. You can try arranging the environment to better suit your needs. You might find a leading task. You got to try to just take action, keep records of successful work or projects, commit with friends to do a project if that's necessary, and then turn difficult tasks into games just to make it more enjoyable for yourself. Mind management, admit procrastination, admitting that that's a problem is the beginning of trying to solve the problem. Be good to yourself by removing the anxiety of procrastination. Don't use fatigue or illness as an escape. Yes, it can be a valid reason, but if it's the consistent issue, the consistent reason, eventually it's just, that's becoming an excuse rather than a valid reason. You want to try to live in the present, give self-rewards, refrain from self-punishment, appreciate the intermediate steps and accomplishments, and occasionally procrastinate with a clear conscience. So Yerkes and Dodson actually created a curve showing a model of benefit or procrastination and its benefits. This model was developed by Robert Yerkes and John Dillingham Dodson in 1908, who conducted experiments on mice. They used electric shocks to more quickly teach mice to learn a task or a habit. And over time, they noticed as the shocks got stronger, the mice took longer to learn the task. And so they eventually became more focused on avoiding the shock rather than actually trying to complete the task at hand. And so Yerkes and Dodson hypothesized that maybe increased arousal would equal increased ability to perform a task well or form a habit. However, this only works up to an optimal level. So performance will eventually continue to get worse once arousal or stress increases beyond that level. And so from this experiment, Yerkes and Dodson created their Yerkes-Dodson curve as a model of the relationship between stress and task performance. They argue that you reach your peak level of performance with an intermediate or optimal level of arousal or stress. So having too little stress would equal poor performance, and too much arousal or stress would also equal poor performance. So you need to be at that optimal level. And the optimal level of arousal or stress depends also on the task that you're trying to complete. So if it's a simple task, you might need a little bit more. But if it's a more difficult task, you might need a little bit less arousal or stress overall. So now I'm going to show an example of how you can use a calendar to kind of help organize what you need to do. This is actually a picture of my own calendar at home. So you'll see a lot of different things on here. So bills, therapy appointments, class assignments, stuff like that. So using a calendar would be very helpful, putting your important dates on there. I prefer to use a physical paper calendar, but you can use whatever kind you're most likely to check off. But it's an easy way to kind of just organize your month and your year, seeing what you need to get done and when. And then just to give a little bit more of a way to organize your procrastination, I have an example of a system that I came up with myself during my sophomore year of college to help organize my own procrastination, and maybe it can help you as well. So in this example, you'll see there's 7 rectangles. Those are I would use as note cards, and I put those up on the wall in that order. And each of those note cards represents each day of the week, so Monday through Sunday. And then on those note cards, you'll see other just colorful rectangles, and those are the sticky notes that I like to use. So each sticky note represents one assignment that you need to complete that week. You'll notice the color-coded key on the side. So this would be how to organize your procrastination each week as a student. So you've got just biology, history, literature, math, drawing, health, whatever your classes are, organize them by color. That's how it helps for me. You can do whatever works best for you. Maybe you have a symbol or something. And so you'll use the color-coded sticky notes for your assignments, and you can make a color-coded key similar to that. And the color of the sticky notes corresponds to the class's assignment for that week. What you'll want to do is you'll want to go through your syllabi, write down all of your assignments for the semester on your calendar, and then also go through your syllabi, write down all of your assignments that you have for that week that you need to complete. It all depends on, when the last due date of your week is. So for my current week, a lot of it's due like on Saturday. So you might want to start your next week, starting it on Sunday, just to make sure that like, I have this entire week to get it done from Sunday to Saturday. Once you have all of your assignments written out on the sticky notes, you're going to want to place them on the days that you want to try to complete the task by. Whether or not it's actually due that day does not matter. You're just going to pick the days you want to get it done. So for instance, I want to make sure that I get the chapters 7 and chapter 8 readings for health done by Wednesday. And depending on how many assignments you have for the week and the difficulty of each assignment, you might put more sticky notes on some days than others. If you prefer to complete assignments a bit earlier, you may place the sticky notes a few days before it's due. So for me, I tend to work well under pressure, so I typically put the sticky note on a day I typically place a sticky note like a day or two before the due date. So that way I can organize my procrastination in a way that ensures my assignments are done on time without having to fully change the way that I function. Minute to catch my breath. Okay. So some people might be thinking, well, what if I complete all the assignments for that day, but I still want to continue being productive? Totally fine. You can try to start doing assignments for later in the week. So let's pretend today is Monday. I already finished my assignments for both biology and math, right? Maybe I also want to read the articles that I need to read for history. Then I won't have anything to do on Tuesday. And I can take that day to just have a break. Or maybe I know that my friends want to hang out on Wednesday. So instead, I might try to read chapter 7 and chapter 8 for health today on Monday, so that now I have nothing to do Wednesday and I have a free day. And then once you've completed an assignment, you can throw away that sticky note entirely. To me, I find that a lot more rewarding than just crossing something off of a list. To me, just a written list on one piece of paper is far more overwhelming than color-coded tasks on separate pieces of paper. It's still there in front of you. You can still see it, even though it's crossed off. It still looks like you have 20 different things to do. So just having it physically gone makes it a lot less overwhelming. Obviously, this method's not going to work for everybody. It took me, like I said, until about my sophomore year of college to figure out this method. It's all about trial and error. You could just try whatever is going to work for you. Maybe start off with something like this and kind of develop it as you go, just to see what's going to help you out the most. This doesn't have to just be for school. This can be for anything, really. So this is like an example of how to organize your procrastination each week in general. So maybe you have to pay your bills by Wednesday. Or even if it's like, oh, I have to pay them by Thursday or by Friday, but I want to try to do them on Wednesday. So putting it there, Maybe trying to meal plan and going grocery shopping. So putting those like in the days, like one of them on Monday, one of them on Tuesday, like trying to just make sure that your week is organized in a way that's going to make the most sense for you. And that is everything. Thank you for watching the presentation.